Would you believe it? Car manufacturers continue to rise the prices of their new vehicles. If it weren't bad enough an insult to injury, we're looking at 2025 model years starting to climb even further. And the specific models that have been jacked up a significant amount of money into 2025, which is clearly insult to injury. Customers are looking for a break. We know car manufacturers are cranking up prices far beyond the core inflation rate, and yet we're looking further increases from 24 to 2025 of even more that's well above the standard inflation rates that we know and love for food and housing. So why are these manufacturers jacking up their prices? Largely because they can. Some of these models are popular, maybe some of them aren't. Some of them are on the way in, and some of them are just drastic changes to the industry. But whatever it is, I'm going to share a list of 9 of those vehicles with the worst increases or the highest increases going into 2025 for base MSRPs. But guess what? I'm going to share one major winner in this cluster where they've actually retracted. Yes, they've dropped base prices down from 2024 to 2025. And it's not a junker car either. It's actually a very reliable car that you're all going to love if you just give it a try. So let's break this right from the top. And the worst offender for sure, we'll work our way to the worst. How about that? Why don't we start with the least offensive one and work our way to the worst? Let's call it the first one. The Ford Explorer is up 8%, up to a whopping $41,350 in 2025. It's absolutely, to me, it's quite offensive in the sense that you're looking at inflation in that 2 to 3, 4% rate at the very most. And here they're jacking up another 8%. But we know with Ford what's been going on and the fact they're trying to raise and generate more money. We've already talked about this. I've mentioned it in other videos about how they plan to increase prices of their ICE vehicles to help fund the research and development for some of their electrified vehicles. For example, the Mustang Mach-E, the Ford F-150 Lightning, which we know are some of the biggest losers, and they lose money on the sale of each one. So to see a Ford on this list does not shock or surprise, but we're seeing an 8% increase on the Explorer. Another one, the next in line is the Kia Carnival, up 8%. Another insult in my mind, up to $37,895. We also know that Kia and Hyundai have been some of those leading the charge, trying to get ahead of the electrified market. And we know that it costs money for research and development. So it doesn't really surprise. It's a popular minivan, and Kia's been selling a lot of them. They were hard to come by for quite a while. So it feels to me like it's a little bit of a lag effect, like they're trying to continue generating revenue from a vehicle that feels to me a little bit old now and a bit of a dead horse, but they're raising the price on it. Now, another one, this one here I can't really blame, because we know during that last 4 years or so that certain manufacturers were notorious for jacking up prices. For example, Stellantis, Jeep, Ram, all those products, Dodge, Chrysler, that Stellantis team were one of the worst offenders for saying that they're going up market, upscale, and they're going to charge accordingly. And that's why they're not selling. That's why they're one of the biggest losers, and they're actually going through a pretty drastic change right now in the organization. They're turfing tons of staff. They're giving them buyout options. And basically, senior executives, we've seen over a handful walk out in the last year. But things are rough over there. But on the other side of the coin, Subaru hasn't been one of those manufacturers. They haven't been abusing the customers as bad. And we haven't seen the big price increases. So to see a Subaru Forester going up by 9% this year into 25 is a little bit annoying, but quite frankly, they didn't follow suit with a lot of the other vendors. And they're going up to about $51,098. All said, again, it's not a cheap vehicle, but the fact that they haven't been just constantly ratcheting up their prices, it doesn't feel that bad. And Subarus, that's probably one of their more reliable models. I've never touted, and we've seen over an Exotic Car Play Place, which if you ever get a chance to go over there, actually one of my worst engine videos I actually just featured here last week. You definitely want to see that. And I talk about some Subarus specifically that are absolutely the worst ones. So definitely want to check that out. And I'll link that in the end of the video here, so you can go head on over and subscribe if you like. The next one in line, again, not a surprise. Ford products have been getting jacked up, and Lincoln being the upscale model of Ford, the Lincoln Aviator is getting jacked up by a whopping 10%. Now, if that's not a slap, I don't know what is. But but we're talking about up to $60,000, 275. Yes, that's absolutely horrendous to see these prices go up like that, because the Aviator, although it's a pretty vehicle, you get the extra row and the seating capacity, V6 power, it's a pretty vehicle, but it's also been ranked as one of the most unreliable vehicles for a few years consecutively. So take your chance with that. And quite frankly, I'd never advocate for overpaying for anything. And we should be seeing these prices drop, not go up. We know that buyers are dropping out of the sky. People aren't buying the vehicles like they did, back in 22, 23. The market's clearly not there. It can't sustain. Their sales are down for every OEM right now, and to come out with increased prices just is ridiculous. Now you can get some deals. You got to go in there and sharpen your pencil, sit down with these dealers, chisel it out, and even with an increased MSRP doesn't necessarily mean that they won't go below invoice. Remember, you've got the full on, here's our price, then you've got sticker price, MSRP, and then you've got invoice. And so you really want to be carving out of invoice. So because some of these brands aren't selling that hot, just because they're charging more doesn't mean that they have the right to or justified, and you might be able to still get yourself a deal. Another one is, this one feels to me a little long in the tooth. See, Infiniti QX80. That one's going up by 11%. Now, to me, charging up to $84,485 feels absolutely unjustified. Now, it's a big, large, and in-charge SUV. We've seen sales on some of the full-size SUVs. We know the only SUV that's selling in Jeep right now that's not losing, is the Wagoneer. And the Grand Wagoneers are clearly the big, large, and in-charge SUVs. A lot of these full-size SUVs just still seem to have that market, and the Infiniti QX80 sort of is that market, although the vehicle is very long in the tooth, majorly due for an overhaul. Well, you know what, even with that said, the model in general is due for an overhaul. Even if they did do a little uplift and a facelift on it, it's still old school. I will say the QX80 is probably one of the more durable vehicles that Infiniti makes. Some of their variable compression engines, bad transmissions with the CVTs and Jatcos were junk. And this one gives you a good old-fashioned torque converter, gives you a V8. So you get a lot of pulling power, third row seating. I see why people are buying them, but they are getting long in the tooth. And quite frankly, an 11% increase just doesn't make sense to me. Here's another one that just has a really bad reputation for stank. And we're talking about the Chev Equinox. 11% increase up to $31,080. Makes no sense to me. They've had so many problems in the history with some of their base engines, piling up timing chains, oil consumption issues, drivability issues, rust, you name it. And while this is a new model, or newer model, it's still not a great vehicle. But if you want to have one, again, remember, there's always those opportunities to go in there and negotiate. Just because they're rising MSRP doesn't mean that if sales are in the tank, continue to watch as we hit the year end here in 24, might be your chance to get the last of the 24s. But as we roll into 25s, even with the raised increases on the MSRPs, you might get yourself a deal. But you got to get in there and you got to chisel off invoice. You got to work off that invoice pricing and not sticker pricing. So let's look at another one. We're talking about the Mini Cooper, up by 12%. BMW Cooper, Mini Cooper, up to $29,945 base sticker price. To me, it just doesn't resonate. It's a BMW product. Remember, after 3 years, you're stuck paying BMW maintenance shop pricing. And so it comes with, luxury car, not just amenities and maybe performance and style, but it's going to come with costs. Service costs, hourly shop rates are going to be higher. It's a great vehicle. It's fun to drive in that sense. But if you're going to keep it long term, just buyer beware on that one. And it's going up too, which doesn't make a lot of sense since BMW hasn't really come out with a whole lot of electrification other than we know some of the I shouldn't say that. I mean, we have seen some of their vehicles, the i6, the i7, iX. Some of those have been out there and they've been selling probably a little better than some of their competitors from the Audi and the e-trons. But, here we go again. Just more insult to injury for the consumer. Another one, this one's a little shocking. We have the Toyota GR Supra is actually going up by a whopping 20%. And this was shocking to me because at $57,345, it blows my doors off. And the reason I say that is recently reports show that the GR Supra, they're debating tossing because it's not selling. The vehicles aren't selling. So maybe this is their last ditch effort to try to extract as much out of that tooling, out of that model. I don't know what it is, but jacking it up by 20% doesn't make any sense. Now, we've seen Toyota do a little bit of that lately. Their latest Camry, that's hybrid only. They're jacking up prices almost to a point where it's no longer a feasible economy car. And Toyota was based on reliability, two things, reliability and value for the money. Well, reliability is going way by the dodo bird with this twin turbo 3.4s that are blowing rods or blowing crank bearings. We're also seeing the 2.4s, turbos not being favorable, not as reliable as the older outgoing models. And honestly, reliability hasn't been what they had hoped it would be, but value for the money was the other aspect. And Toyota, if they're not giving you reliability, because they clearly are losing some of it, and they're not giving you value, what does that mean for Toyota? I'm not sure. But before we get to the last one, the last vehicle on the list, which is absolutely mind-blowing that these manufacturers even try to charge you and I and customers this kind of money, to think that they're jacking prices up like this is absolutely mind-blowing to me. But before we get into that, I want to share the best bang for buck this year in terms of a vehicle manufacturer and specific model that's actually gone down in price this year. That's right, down. They've actually retracted some of their pricing. And we're talking about the Mazda 3, the 5-door as well as the sedan. The sedan, the base model, has gone down by $220. So it's not a mass amount, but at least they're showing some good faith and some goodwill. Clearly sales aren't, exactly where they'd like them to be, and days supply are a little higher even on Mazda products when you compare them to the other Japanese models like the Lexus and Toyota. So it's kind of interesting, but they are offering up a little bit of a discount. And as well, you can also get the 5-vehicle discount, or the 5-door discounts as well are available on some of the Mazda 3 models. You're starting to see discounts there by $3,000, as much as $3,000 on a similarly equipped, although it's a different model. They both have a turbo 4-cylinder engine, and you're able to get into a significant vehicle and a decent buy that's comparable to the 24s. It's changing models that you're actually able to step down in money and get a similar trim level, similar performance. So you're starting to see some good bang for buck. Check out Mazda 3. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Their reliability is up there. It's actually outrating right now Honda's, and it's up there battling punches there with the likes of Toyota and Lexus. So I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. And hopefully that helps you. If you're looking for an affordable vehicle, that might be a good place to start. The last one, which is mind-blowing to me, and I'm going to just say it's going up to a whopping $48,990. And if you can believe, an increase of 23% means they're jacking up. Oh, what are they thinking, guys? What are they literally thinking? A manufacturer cranking up almost 25% on their base sticker price from 24 to 25 when we clearly know the market can't bear it. And we know that's setting this model up for failure, in my opinion. But we also know that it's one of the manufacturers that's affiliated with those brands that are deciding to retract on the sales of electric vehicles. While they're not giving it up entirely, they've clearly announced that they're going to back up and they're going to just cool that down a little bit and not put all their eggs in that basket, because they're seeing sales are taking a major hit, and as well as the cost to put into these electric vehicles are hurting them really bad. So what we're looking at is a GM, a General Motors product, but specifically the Cadillac CT5 going up by 23% for 25. I don't get it. Definitely drop a line. What do you think? Have you seen any other brutal buys out there? And have you seen any amazing buys that you can maybe share with the rest of the buyers on the line? Hope to see each and every one of you. Definitely want to check out those videos. Again, I mentioned some of those vehicles, the Subaru, the worst vehicles with the worst engines, and that video as well. You're going to want to see it. Hope to see each and every one of you in the next one. See you real soon. Bye-bye.